Father abandoned me and brothers with no money or food after our mother died. He left a note saying he was going to meet the love of his life and would only return after finding another mother for us, so we ended up in foster care. When I was just 15 years old, my dad walked out on me and my siblings, leaving us to fend for ourselves. But to be honest, even when he was around, it wasn't like he was much of a father. He was never the kind of dad who cared for us, supported us, or even tried to be present in our lives. Instead, he spent most of his time drinking, wasting away at bars until he was too drunk to stand. And when he wasn't drinking, he was gambling, racking up debts that he could never pay back. His bad habits drained our family, not just emotionally but financially too. It was my mom who kept us afloat. She was the only one who worked and brought home any money. She had dreams of going to college and building a better future for herself, but life had other plans. She had to drop out and take whatever job she could find, which ended up being a small diner. It wasn't a glamorous job, and it definitely didn't pay much, but it was enough to keep food on the table. She worked long, exhausting hours, often taking extra shifts just to make sure we had something to eat. While other kids had dads who took them to school or played catch with them in the yard, our dad was nowhere to be found. And even when he was around, it was like he wasn't really there, just a man who stumbled through the door late at night, reeking of alcohol, with nothing to offer us but more disappointment. Growing up was anything but easy for me and my younger twin brothers. Our home was not a place filled with warmth or security. It was a place of struggle, stress, and responsibility that weighed on me more than any teenager should have to bear. Since both of my parents were either absent or too busy, I was the one who stepped in to raise my brothers. It wasn't just an occasional responsibility, it was my entire life. Every morning, I was the one who woke them up, made sure they got dressed, and cooked them breakfast. I walked them to school, making sure they had everything they needed for the day. After school, while other kids were hanging out with friends, playing sports, or just relaxing, I had to rush home. My time was never my own because my mother expected me to be the one taking care of my brothers. I helped them with their homework, made them dinner, and tucked them into bed at night. I didn't get to experience the things most kids my age did. I couldn't go out after school, couldn't go to birthday parties, couldn't even just sit around and talk with friends for too long. My mother never really asked me if I wanted to take on this role, she simply expected it from me. While she was out working long hours, I was at home, stepping into a role that wasn't meant for me. I wasn't just a big sister, I was their caretaker, their second parent, and in many ways, I had to grow up far too fast. Because of everything that happened, I carry a lot of resentment toward my parents. But the way I feel about each of them is very different. I don't hate my mom the way I hate my dad. As much as I struggled under the weight of responsibilities she placed on me, I know she was doing the best she could. She was stuck in a terrible situation, trying to keep us fed, clothed, and safe while working herself to the bone. My dad, on the other hand, didn't even try. He wasn't just absent, he was destructive. He and my mom fought all the time, and it was never just yelling. It got physical more often than I can count. I have so many memories of her crying, of him hitting her, of the fear that would settle deep in my stomach whenever I heard his voice slurring with alcohol. He wasn't just abusive toward her, he made our lives hell too. As kids, my brothers and I lived in constant fear of what kind of mood he would be in when he stumbled through the door. Since I was the oldest, I felt like it was my responsibility to protect my brothers. I would stand between them and him, trying to shield them from his rage. But sometimes, that meant I became his target. When he was especially drunk, he wouldn't hesitate to raise his hands against me too. There were nights when I had to hide under the bed, holding my breath, praying that he would just pass out so I wouldn't have to feel his fists or hear his threats. It was terrifying. No child should ever have to live like that, but for us, it was just another night in our house. Then, one night, everything changed forever. My mom never made it home. She was hit by a drunk driver on her way back from work. The impact was so severe that she didn't even make it to the hospital. She was gone before anyone could save her. When I heard the news, it felt like the world around me shattered. She may not have been the perfect mother, but she was the only real parent we had. She was the one who kept us together, who worked endlessly to make sure we had food and a roof over our heads. And just like that, she was gone. After the funeral, things only got worse. My dad, already a miserable excuse for a father, became completely unbearable. He was angry all the time, lashing out at us over the smallest things. It was like he blamed us for everything, and we were the ones who had to suffer for his frustration. He would throw things around the house, break whatever was in his reach, and take his rage out on me and my brothers. The little money my mom had left behind should have gone toward taking care of us, but instead, he wasted it all on himself, on drinking, gambling, and chasing after whatever new woman he had found that week. He barely even stayed home. Some nights, he wouldn't come back at all. Other times, he'd disappear for days, leaving us completely on our own with no food and no money. There were times when we went for days without a proper meal. The only thing we had to eat was cereal, and even that wasn't always enough. Things got so bad that I had to start skipping meals just so my brothers could have something in their stomachs. I would tell them I wasn't hungry, even when I was starving. I had no choice, I had to be strong for them. There was no one else left to take care of us. Then, just 6 months after my mom died, my dad abandoned us completely. I woke up one morning and immediately felt that something was off. The house was too quiet. There was no sound of my dad stomping around, no clinking of bottles, no yelling. At first, I thought maybe he had just gone out early, but when I walked past his room, I noticed something strange. His closet was empty. His shoes were gone. Everything that belonged to him, his clothes, his bag, even his toothbrush had vanished. Panic set in, and I grabbed my phone to call him. It rang and rang, but he never picked up. I tried again, but nothing. That's when I saw a folded piece of paper left on the kitchen table with my name on it. My hands were shaking as I opened it. In the note, he wrote that he was leaving to go on a trip to finally meet the so-called love of his life, some woman he had met online. He didn't say where he was going, just that he had no idea when he'd be back. And then came the part that made my stomach drop. He wrote that he would only return after he found another mother for us. That was it. No apology. No concern for how we would survive. Just a pathetic excuse for why he was leaving his own kids behind. At that moment, I realized that our father was never coming back. We were all on our own. I stared at the note for what felt like forever, reading the words over and over again, hoping that maybe I was misunderstanding something. Maybe this was just another one of his drunken mistakes. Maybe he would come back. But deep down, I knew the truth: he had abandoned us. How could he do this? How could a father just leave his own kids without a second thought? He didn't even have the decency to talk to us first. No warning, no plan, nothing. Just a cold, selfish decision to disappear and leave us to figure everything out on our own. And the worst part was that he hadn't left a single cent behind. No money for food. No money for rent. Nothing. He had completely stranded us. My brothers were still asleep in the next room, unaware that their world had just crumbled. For the first time in my life, I was scared, not just for myself, but for my brothers. We had no one now. No parents. No money. No idea what to do next. And for the first time, I didn't have any answers. For the first week after he left, I did everything I could to take care of my brothers. I scrambled to find ways to keep us fed, borrowing money from the few kind friends I had. I told them it was just for a little while, that things would get better soon. Deep down, I was still clinging to the hope that my dad would come back, that maybe he had just made a rash decision and would realize his mistake. But as the days passed, that hope started to fade. By the second week, his phone was completely switched off. No matter how many times I tried calling, it always went straight to an automated message. He was nowhere to be found. The reality of our situation started sinking in, and it was terrifying. We ran out of food, and the electricity bill hadn't been paid, so soon, the lights went out. I had no idea what to do. We had no immediate family to turn to. Both sets of grandparents had passed away years ago, and I didn't know of any relatives who would be willing to help us. Even if there were any, I doubted they would want to take in 3 abandoned kids. It felt like we were completely alone in the world. At that point, I knew I had no other option. I had to call CPS. It was the hardest call I had ever made, but I couldn't let my brothers starve. When CPS got involved, they tried to track down my dad, hoping to make him take responsibility. But it was like he had completely vanished. The moment he found out that child services was looking for him, he went completely off the map. His phone number went out of service, and no one, not a single person, had any way to reach him. I won't go into every little detail, but after that, my brothers and I were placed in foster care. And to be honest, it was horrible. We didn't just lose our home, we lost our sense of security, our peace of mind, and any feeling of stability we had left. I fought as hard as I could to keep us together. I wanted to make sure my brothers and I stayed in the same home, but that wasn't always possible. Sometimes, we were split up, and those moments were the hardest. I had spent my whole life looking after them, protecting them, making sure they never felt alone. And now, there were times when I couldn't even be there for them. It broke me, but I never stopped trying. The only thing that kept me going was the thought that one day, I would be old enough to take back control. And when I finally turned 18, that's exactly what I did. I was officially an adult, which meant I could finally do something real for my brothers. I wasted no time. I rushed to find a job, any job that would help me support them. And as soon as I had some stability, I started the legal process to adopt them as their guardian. It wasn't easy. The process was long, frustrating, and full of obstacles. There were so many legal hoops to jump through, so many interviews, so much paperwork. But I didn't care. I had spent my entire life fighting for my brothers. I wasn't about to give up now. And then, after what felt like an eternity of waiting, I finally got the news. I was finally granted legal guardianship. They were officially my responsibility now. No one could separate us ever again. When I told my brothers about it, they broke down in tears and hugged me tightly, sobbing into my arms. It was the first time in a long time that we had cried, not out of sadness, but out of relief. Out of love. Out of the knowledge that, no matter what, we were a family, and we always would be. Ever since then, I have worked every single day of my life to make sure that my brothers and I never had to experience poverty again. I didn't want us to just survive. I wanted us to build real, stable lives, the kind we never had growing up. So, I did everything I could to support my brothers through college and even after that. It wasn't easy, and I couldn't always give them everything, but I helped as much as I possibly could. Whether it was covering part of their tuition, helping with rent, or just being there for them emotionally, I made sure they never felt alone in their struggles. I wanted them to have opportunities that I never did. I wanted them to build careers, to chase their dreams, to live without the constant weight of survival dragging them down. And now, all those years of struggle have finally paid off. Both of my brothers have excellent jobs, and they've built lives they can be proud of. The three of us still live in the same city, staying as close as ever. One of my brothers is in a loving relationship with his partner, while the other one lives in an apartment on his own. No matter how much our lives have changed, we always make time for each other. We go out together, we check in on each other, and we never forget what we've been through. My brothers always tell me that they owe me everything, that they wouldn't be where they are without me. But the truth is, I never saw it as a sacrifice. I just did what any older sibling should do. I love them, and I refuse to let them suffer alone. We grew up in the worst circumstances, but we made it through. And now, we get to live the lives we always deserved. It's been 15 years since our dad abandoned us, and in that time, we have come such a long way. Despite everything, we still hold on to the memories of our mother. We talk about her often, sharing stories about the little moments we remember her laugh, the way she worked so hard for us, the sacrifices she made. Keeping her memory alive is important to us because, no matter what, she tried. She loved us. Our father, on the other hand, is a different story. We hate him. It's as simple as that. We don't talk about him unless we have to, and none of us have ever even considered trying to reach out to him. As far as we were concerned, he had erased himself from our lives, and we were happy to keep it that way. Recently, I was completely caught off guard when I received a message on Facebook from an unknown account. The message was short, simple: "I've missed you. How are you and your brothers doing?" At first, I was confused. I typed back a quick response, asking, "Who is this?" A few moments later, I got a reply, "It's your dad." At first, I thought it was a joke, maybe some cruel prank by someone who knew about my past. The account had no profile picture, no posts, nothing that could prove it was really him. Besides, I had no idea he even had a Facebook account. I was just about to block the account when another message popped up. This time, it wasn't just words. It was a photo. The moment I saw it, my breath caught in my throat. It was an old family picture, one of the very few that existed of all of us together. It was me, my brothers, my mom, and him. I hadn't seen that picture in years, and I knew, without a doubt, that no one else could have had it except for him. That's when it hit me. It really was him. He kept typing, sending more messages. He told me that he still thinks of us every day, that he misses us, that he regrets everything. Then, he dropped the biggest bombshell: he wanted to meet up and get to know more about us. I felt a wave of anger so strong it made my hands shake. Now he wanted to know us? After 15 years of silence? After abandoning us without a second thought? After making us suffer, starve, and struggle just to survive? He had the audacity to show up out of nowhere and act like he cared? As if he had any right to ask that. I decided not to reply. I didn't owe him a single word. But that hasn't stopped him. He keeps texting me, message after message, as if he thinks I'll eventually forgive him. But I won't. Not now. Not ever. If I don't let my dad back into our lives ever again? Update 1. A few days have passed, and I have kept ignoring Dad's messages. Every time I saw that notification pop up, my blood would boil. I kept telling myself I wasn't going to respond, I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. But then, another message came in today, and this one made me stop dead in my tracks. He admitted to me that he has a whole new family now and that this is why he had been reaching out to me. I stared at the screen, my grip tightening around my phone. Before I could even process that, another message followed. "I got married a few years ago, and I have kids now. I really think it would be good for all of us to meet. My wife would love to get to know you and your brothers. We can start over, as a family. I can finally take care of you and your brothers." That was it. That was the moment I snapped. I typed back, rage pouring into every word. "Are you kidding me? You had the balls to disappear from our lives, leave us to starve, never check in on us, and went ahead and started a whole other family? Now, after 15 goddamn years, you want to introduce us to your new perfect little family? Does she know the whole story? Does she and your children know what you did to us?" I was shaking with anger as I typed. My heart was pounding. My father claimed he had been desperate back then and did what he thought was right at the time, insisting that he never truly meant to abandon us. He went on to say how proud he was of me for raising my brothers, making sure we were okay, and how he had always known I was the strongest child. As if I had a choice. As if I hadn't been forced into that role because he failed us. But what angered me the most was what he said next. He urged me to keep the past hidden from his new family. His wife and kids didn't need to know everything, he argued, because some things were better left as secrets. He insisted that we didn't have to drag up old wounds, that we could start over on a positive note without dwelling on the past. That was the moment I realized he wasn't truly sorry. He didn't care about what we had been through, he just didn't want to look bad in front of his new family. He wanted us to pretend none of it had happened, to erase the suffering he had caused so he wouldn't have to feel ashamed. The sheer audacity of his words sent a fresh wave of rage through me. He wanted to rewrite history for his own comfort, but we didn't have the luxury of forgetting. We had lived that nightmare. We had fought through it. And now, after 15 years, he expected us to ignore it so he could play happy family? I refused to let him have that. With my hands shaking, I blocked him, this time for good. Let him enjoy his perfect little life, I wanted no part of it. We don't need to meet your wife. We don't need to meet your kids. We don't need you at all. You weren't a father to us back then when we needed you the most, so don't come crawling back now, acting like you care about us now. You don't get to start over just because it's convenient for you now. He read my message almost instantly, and for a moment, I thought maybe just maybe he would finally admit he was a selfish person. Maybe he'd own up to the fact that he had failed us. But instead, he responded with the same fake concern. I understand you're upset, but please, just think about it. My wife really wants to meet all of you. I just shook my head at his audacity. There was nothing left to say. After that, I blocked him on Facebook. This man wasn't my father. He was just a stranger who happened to share my DNA. And I wasn't about to waste another second of my life on him. Update 2. Even though I had blocked my dad, he wasn't ready to give up so easily. Since he couldn't get through to me anymore, he did the next thing I had feared. He reached out to my brothers. I hadn't told them about the messages he had sent me because I didn't want to burden them with it. They had moved on from that part of our lives, and I saw no reason to drag them back into it. But my dad, being the selfish man he always was, doesn't care about what was best for them. He only cares about what he wants. So, out of nowhere, my brothers received messages from him. Just like me, they were completely caught off guard. Dad sent them the same pitiful apology he had sent me, talking about how much he missed them and how he wanted to make things right. He even told them that he had first reached out to me, but that I had ignored him and blocked him, making it sound like I was purposely keeping him away from them. He painted himself as the poor, regretful father who just wanted to reconnect, while I was the cruel, unforgiving child who was standing in his way. And in a way, I was keeping him away from my brothers. But not because I was being selfish or petty. I was doing it to protect them. My brothers had already suffered so much because of him. The trauma he had left us with didn't just disappear overnight. We had spent years trying to heal, to build our lives, to move on from the pain he caused. And now that they were finally happy, finally stable, he wanted to waltz back in and act like he had the right to be part of their lives again. When my brothers told me about Dad reaching out to them, they admitted they weren't sure how to feel about it. Unlike me, they didn't have many memories of our parents together. They had been so young when everything happened, and most of what they remembered about Dad was the pain he caused us. They didn't have any happy memories of him, no moments of warmth, no fatherly affection, nothing that would make them want to reconnect. All they really knew was that he had abandoned us when we needed him the most. So, they made one thing very clear: they didn't see the point in trying to build a relationship with someone who had never been there for them. In their eyes, he wasn't a father, just a man who happened to share our DNA. He had never cared for us, never looked out for us, and now that we had grown up and built our own lives without him, there was no reason to suddenly welcome him back in. They weren't interested in his apologies or his excuses, and they definitely weren't interested in meeting his new family. This is why, unlike me, they had no hesitation to block him. They didn't even feel the need to respond. After all, he wasn't worth the energy. He had already proven what kind of person he was, and they had no intention of giving him a second chance. I felt relieved, not because I had wanted to make the decision for them, but because they had come to the same conclusion I had. He had left us behind a long time ago, and now, we were leaving him behind for good. Update 3. A few days after my brothers blocked Dad, I received a new message request on Facebook. When I clicked on their profile, I realized it was from my dad's new wife. Since Dad was blocked, I guess she figured she could reach out to me instead. She introduced herself and said she had heard a lot about me from Dad. She mentioned that she would love to meet me in person and get to know me better. Immediately, I felt uneasy. Something about this felt off. Why were Dad and his wife suddenly so desperate to meet me and my brothers? What was the real reason behind all of this? I decided to be direct. I asked her to stop with the small talk and tell me what was really going on. At first, she hesitated, dodging the question with vague responses, but after a little coaxing, she finally admitted the truth: Dad was sick. He had kidney failure and was in desperate need of a new kidney. And just like that, everything clicked into place. This was why he had been reaching out to us after all these years. It had nothing to do with guilt, regret, or wanting to make amends. He didn't care about reconnecting with us. He just needed something from us. Something that could save his life. As if that wasn't disgusting enough, his wife then admitted that she didn't want her own kids to have to go through with a transplant since they were still young. Instead, she was hoping that I, as the oldest, would step up and help my father. She even had the nerve to say that she didn't want to lose her husband and that she needed my help. I was stunned by the sheer audacity of it. This woman, who I had never met in my life, was asking me to risk my health for the same man who had abandoned me and my brothers. The same man who had left us to starve, who had beaten us, who had treated us like we were nothing. And now, because he was facing the consequences of his own actions, I was suddenly supposed to step up? To save his life when he never once cared about ours? After everything he had done, after all the suffering he had caused, was this the only reason he wanted back in our lives? Not to apologize. Not to make amends. Just to use us one last time. I told her that if she was so desperate to save him, she should do it herself because we weren't going to lift a single finger to help him. Then, I warned her. If she or my father ever dared to contact me or my brothers again, I would take legal action against them. I didn't care what it took: restraining orders, harassment charges, whatever was necessary. We had spent too long rebuilding our lives for them to come back and drag us into their mess. This was the last time they would ever bother us. Without waiting for a response, I blocked her. Just like I had blocked my father.